I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and I am thrilled to be hosting this Meet the Experts TV animation panel featuring Karina Manashil, the executive producer of Entergalactic on Netflix, Jin Ahn, the animation supervisor and supervising director on Amazon Prime's The Legend of Vox Machina, and Colin Heck, the supervising director on Netflix's Mulligan. First question I want to ask is to you, Colin, and the first question I have is, what is the piece of animation that you saw and that made you say, I want to work in that, or that's what I want to do?
Geez, okay. The first thing I can remember is in grade school. I can't remember why, but my math teacher brought in some pencil tests from Beauty and the Beast. Why my math teacher had pencil tests from Beauty and the Beast, I have no idea. Why we were watching that instead of doing math, I don't know. But it was the first time I sort of put it together, like, oh, these beautiful images on the screen are hand drawn that somebody does, and I like to draw. Oh, maybe I can do that someday. So I turned out to be very bad at math and a lot better at drawing. So it worked out.
What about you, son?
Oh, I had like a kind of a combination. Like, of course, I was first exposed to like the original 80s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. And then on the other hand, my cousin also showed me this other anime series from Japan called Dragon Ball. And so I was juggling both, but like, it's not that I liked one over the other. It was more of like, it widened my eyes to see like the spectrum and the versatility that animation. Of course, I didn't know what that meant when I was little, but I kind of, in my adult years now, realized, yeah, like what really sparked my joy was like seeing like the spectrum or the versatility of like how like the different experience you can get from different kind of shows, just even from how they're drawn. So, you know, ever since then, I was just drawing whenever I could. And much like Colin, I'm sorely bad at math, but really good at drawing.
And Karina, I know you're not, you don't work exclusively in animation, but is there a piece of animation that was like your first eye-opening thing to the medium?
Yeah, I have to say I'm really inspired by what both of you guys said, because I definitely grew up on Disney films, but anime was my heart and soul. I mean, I can't thank Toonami enough for exposing me to more things that have identified what I really love in animation. And I was joking with these guys earlier, but I almost exclusively watch anime right now. So I would suppose that would be my biggest inspiration into the space.
What are you watching?
Oh, everything. I mean, we can have an offline, but to say Demon Slayer, the most beautiful animation I've ever seen in those fight sequences. Obviously, Attack on Titan is the greatest of all time, and like 101 other fringy ones that I don't want to take the whole room's time for this, but we can definitely become friends after and talk.
and just for the sake of harmony, are you also bad at math?
Yeah, that was not. I was definitely more the English student than the math student.
I was stellar until after Algebra 1, and then it was all downhill from there. So we all have that in common here. So we're all good.
It was on point.
You know, there's so many amazing things that you can do when you tell a story through animation. I think there's so many pluses to it. And Sung, I'll start with you on this one. In your opinion, what's the best thing about telling a story through animation?
Well, you know, for me, especially being so passionate about the process of animation, I've come to learn that animation is actually the art of limitation, because you actually want to like specifically like bespoke plan on how you want to execute certain emotions or experiences, but also like trying to keep like the actual artist in mind, because you know, even though artists might have the passion or soul to draw anything and everything, you know, we want to keep like their passionate energies, you know, within constraint of reasonability. So I actually like, it's almost like a Tetris puzzle for me. I like going in, I love telling really like surreal adult stories, like that really gives an audience like a visceral experience, but also try to figure out how to do it where like it's going to be like also a passionate and fun time for the artists to do. So I want the artists to be invested as much as I am telling the story, even if it's like down to the prop designer or the animator or even the background designer. So it's a little bit of an unrealistic goal of mine, but something that I always try to strive for.
And what about you, Colin?
I'm gonna give two answers, I guess. So my favorite times, and I've largely worked in comedy for the most part. Like you mentioned The Simpsons earlier, and a lot of my resume is comedy. It's not all comedy, but a lot of it is. And the magic of arranging drawings and sound in a way that makes people laugh is still an alchemy that amazes me every time. Like, I take it for granted after 40 some years of The Simpsons, but when you can draw a bunch of pictures and put them on screen and people laugh, that's amazing to me. Like if you sit in a room and a lot of people are laughing at the same thing that you put together, it's a pretty heady experience. Separately, working on Legend of Korra allowed us to push some boundaries in terms of like stuff that I wasn't even sure that we could pull off, and it got pulled off. And I'm not talking about comedy, I'm talking about like action scope. There's some stuff in Legend of Korra that I look back now, I'm like, how did we do that? I think we all went into a trance. And that like the mix of dynamics of like intense, incredible action and basically magic and emotion is this is not a succinct answer in any way, but being able to create dynamics on screen that make people feel something, I guess, is the answer to all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was talking about laughter, and now I'm talking about, are they going to be okay? Like creating a feeling of danger for these drawings. That's amazing.
It's way more interesting than math, right? Yeah. We can all agree.
What about you, Karina?
I'll have a twofold answer too. I think in our experience, obviously the freedom of what you can show was something that really drew us to animation, being able to show halos around a girl, and that's the expression of seeing somebody that you first love, or living in space or living in different colorscapes. That freedom, I think, allowed us to take something which in its like thesis is a very simple love story and make it feel like an expression that's very new. The other thing, and this is, I suppose, a little personal for Scott, but in his experience with music and as a recording artist, the buck always starts and stops with him. There was, he has producers he works with and people who are working with him on it throughout, but he has to have the impetus for the song and the lyrics for the song and say it's done and here's where it goes on the album. And it's a bit of a personal experience. But with this process of Entergalactic, he saw like having this little idea up here and it touches 350 hands all around the world over a course of 3 years. And somehow all of those hands are moving in tandem. And the thing that he saw at the end was even better than what he could have ever imagined. And for him, I mean, truly, he cried at the first screening. We did it at Entergalactic for that reason, because it's such a profound medium to think that somehow by some synergy, all of us are moving in the exact same way. And I don't know, there's something special about this medium just for that.
And so something I had someone say, I can't remember if it was at a movie or a TV animation panel last year, say to me that they were very they always want to emphasize that animation is a medium, it is not a genre. And we heard that a lot this year mainly whenever Guillermo del Toro was giving a speech for his Pinocchio movie, and he made that a very big part, and I think it's an important thing. And there are so many different kinds of stories that have been told through animation, but also have yet to be told through animation. And I was wondering if there are any kinds of stories you'd like to see done through animation. And I'll start with you, Karina.
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like Guillermo is onto it, because I don't think that there's any limit to the type of stories that can be told through animation. And I think even considering the moments that really move me, and we're talking about Disney and anime and all of these circumstances, these are things that we grew up with, and still you can get the chills just thinking. As an example, my son was watching Lion King the other day. The music comes on with Mufasa's death, and I could tell you frame by frame exactly what happens in that moment. So I feel like there is a visceral quality to this medium that really tethers to our memory, our senses. And if we allow more genres to be explored in it, it's all the merrier. I mean, the first thing that came into my head is I'd love to see like a true horror film in animation.
Stole mine.
Yeah, did I steal it? Oh, we could talk about this more. I mean, as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking visceral experiences, and horror is one of those. Yeah, I think there you go.
It's very difficult to pull off. Yeah.
Very difficult to pull off too. I agree, but that would be something I'd love to see.
Yeah, and I'll go to you next, Colin. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, or any other one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of like this stuff is happening. Everything that we're talking about is happening. It's just, is it happening in America? And I would love to see bigger genre explorations in animation. I think I've heard some rumblings of things that are happening, but like I would love to see something that has the space to be creepy on an American theater screen, or horror as Karina was saying. I mean, we just as a change, like I love comedic animation. I love a lot of stuff that Disney and Pixar are doing. I love a lot of stuff that's coming out, but I would love to see other stuff. Like Pinocchio, the fact that Pinocchio exists is really cool. I'd like to see everybody do more of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, like whenever people are asking me for a show recommendation, one of the ones I always go to is BoJack Horseman. And the thing about that is that because it has some of the most incredible like sight comedic gags, but then will hit you in the gut emotionally. What about you, son?
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of fortunate in a way of like, even though it was like for an episode 4, season 1, we got to explore like a horror episode, which is a first for me. It's not like Colin said, it's not very common in animation yet, and definitely because it's also challenging. So we definitely stepped up to the plate and tried to make it as horrific as could. But personally too, I would love to explore like themes or stories of like more tragedy, something that can really almost make the audience go powerless, like get them invested in a character or story and have it so deeply like moving or seated in their experience that like as the story unfolds, as it progresses, I almost want to extract a reaction from them. Like I don't want, like they know what's about to happen. They, with every fiber in their body, don't want it to happen because of the anticipation of the tragedy that's going to unfold and such. Like, so I'm sure there are like films or maybe even other animation pieces out there, but at least in my personal career and experience, I would love to explore something in that direction.
Basically, we want to torture people.
Yes. That's what we get to do. Yeah, skip math or torture people.
Oh man, that's gotta be a tagline for something now. And so one other thing that I just love is one of the things I love about animation is that when you watch something and you hear a character speaking, and you have to have that distance where you recognize the voice, but you can't put your finger out, and then it hits you. And then there are certain times you hear that you recognize the voice, and you just like, it hits you like a freight train. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hearing this person either saying these lines. Like, I think of like Susan Sarandon in an episode of Rick and Morty, just completely blew my mind. Or Keith Olbermann voicing a blue whale that's a news anchor on BoJack Horseman. My personal. Have you ever had any of those moments watching something animated? I'll go to you first, Colin.
I feel like it's constant. I feel like that happens all the time. I watched all of Strange World, and it was just nagging me for a long time. Like, who's the main guy? And I figured out halfway through that it was Jake Gyllenhaal, and it blew my mind. Basically every voice in BoJack like every single voice in BoJack. Bob's Burgers has a ton of that because like I like a lot of like excuse me, apparently I have an appointment. The like when Paul F. Tompkins shows up in something, it's very exciting to me. I love his comedy. It's just a joy to see him. I there's too many examples for me to think of, but I don't know how many people have watched Mulligan, but when we started doing the records for Mulligan, I was like, I don't think I forget that Lamar is Dana Carvey a lot. I don't know if that's everybody's experience, but he's doing a different enough voice that will be in edits and stuff. And I'm like, oh, right, this is Garth. Like this is Dana Carvey. Right. Like I watched Wayne's World the other day and it was, he's amazing in it. And I was like, oh, right. That's my guy. So it's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what about you, Karina?
Oh, mine definitely was when I first heard John Benjamin again, John Benjamin, and it brought me back to home movies because that was one of my adult swim favorites growing up, and and then of course now he's like my heart and soul and everything I see. Bob's Burgers, truly, I can't get enough of. It's Archer, it's endless, but that was an early moment with that.
I remember seeing him on Dr. Katz Professional Therapist on Comedy Central all those years ago.
Yep.
What about you, son?
Well, mine's like was such a small moment, but I remember distinctly in season 1 of Vox Machina, we were building an animatic in an edit session, and this one incidental guard on the side of the shot had one line, and it, like you said, like it clinged on to me, and I couldn't. I was like, oh my God, that sounds so familiar. And it wasn't until I realized later when I was talking with the Critical Role folks, they're like, oh yeah, we got Logic the rapper just come in and just do one line. I'm like, I was like, what? I did this like obviously years ago, pre-pandemic, but I'm like, oh yeah, we're fun. So we just like, hey, do you want to do an animated voice? Like, yeah, sure. And they just invited him over. He just read one line, made it to the final cut episode, and they told nobody. And it's just like, yeah. So that was just like a pretty memorable and funny memory I have from season 1.
Well, Karina, Sung, and Colin, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best. And thanks for joining us for our Meet the Experts panel on TV animation.
Yes,
This was a pleasure.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Really enjoyed it.